the 28th of March 2020, and I just thought I would film a little video of me doing some grafting on the apple trees. Don't really know if the camera's picking up because it's a GoPro and obviously I can't see. I've got my phone kind of set up to try and capture, but that's what it is. Anyway, I've got some rootstocks here. See the length of them, reasonable length. I think they're 2 years old, reasonable root systems. They are MM106, meaning they're fairly vigorous. And along with the rootstocks, I've got the scion to go with it, which is the 1 year old growth from the apple tree. So I've got a few different varieties I've grafted, probably, well, I've grafted quite a few already, but Laxton's Fortune, I've got Blenheim Orange after Blenheim Palace, birthplace of Winston Churchill. I've got Ellison's Orange there, and I've got quite another few that I have grafted already, but I'll just show you roughly what I'm doing. So, well, first of all, we'll graft Courpen du Plat as well. We'll try and graft one of the Courpen du Plat. So just cut the end. That's how I'm doing it anyway. Cut the end and just keep it there, keep it clean, so don't let it get dirty. And then cut the rootstock. Try and find a bit that's smooth so we can try and make a decent cut. So cut it there, let that bit fall away. Get the knife. Now I have kind of been sterilising this on and off with surgical spirits. But essentially what we do is we make, well, there's a few different ways to do it, but the way I'm doing it is working tongue. So I'm putting a slice in the rootstock, upward slice, and then what I'll do is set that aside. So I've done my sloping cut on the rootstock, and obviously the outside's the outer bark, and then just inside the green, the light green layer, I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but that's the cambium, and that's what we've got to match up with the scion. But obviously if they're different thicknesses, it becomes, you have to offset it, so it'll only touch on one side, which is fine. But it was certainly fine for me last year. So once you've got your rootstock, just put a slight, I was going to cut the scion, but I've cut this and changed. So put a tongue in the sort of apical top half of the rootstock. Be careful not to cut yourself, hopefully. I've already done quite a bit of slicing. So that's us there. Set that aside. Then make a kind of corresponding cut in the scion. And just try and have it one smooth continuous cut. Okay, so there we go. I've just put a bit of a slice in my thumb now, handy. And then put another tongue in the apical half, which is, you can point the upwards end of this. Put another tongue in there. Then what you want to do is take both the pieces and just try and line them up, sort of, you know, locking in the tongues. So that's the tongues locked in. That's actually not too bad, surprisingly. But you can see the sort of wee system there. Well, they're not great cuts. This is only my second year trying the grafting, but they did work last year. I think of 20 last year. 20, I probably had 14 or 15 take. So what you do then is, it holds itself together, but you know, you just want to make sure that the cambium is in contact. Now it's roughly flush. Don't know if that'll pick that up there. It's roughly flush. You've just got to try and judge it. As I say, obviously it's off out of alignment on the other side. That isn't a problem. So I'm just trying not to get blood on everything. But I'm just getting some of this tape. Get into that. I bought this tape, but I mean last year I used freezer bags cut into strips. It was absolutely fine. So I just wrap it, turning it, and then once it's sort of caught in, I really tighten up the wraps initially, even if it means, you know, crumpling the cling film tape, parafilm, whatever they want to call it. It'll be fine. Just pull that tight. Pull that real tight. Pull it tight. And just make sure that it's not moved much, and it hasn't, so we're okay. Then what you want to do is just, you want to make sure that any cut points are, you know, really well covered with the tape. So I'll take another wee run of tape just to, and keep it wide. Keep it, you know, a bit wider. So, and then I'll just essentially make sure the cut surfaces aren't exposed, because you don't want them drying out. Just wrap it. Doesn't matter if you wrap over a bud, either the bud will push through or leave another bud above. So that's us there, wrapped up, ready to go. Tie it off. However you want to tie it off. Just make sure it's sealed essentially. Then, you know, if you're just leaving the one bud which is there, you just cut it at an angle. And then use a bit of grafting sealant. Sealant and just coat that there so it doesn't dry out. And that's you, away you go. You could coat all of that. I did that last year, but I don't really think it's necessary. So that's a variety de Corpen du Plat, which I think is very old and quite rare. So should it work, and fingers crossed it will, then, you know, the benefit is you get a bit of a variety and the satisfaction that you've managed to graft it yourself, fingers crossed. But yes, I'll label it up and we shall see. that is a grafting knife specifically for grafting. It's actually been pretty good. Last year I just used the wee Opinel knife, but the Opinel knife's got a bevel on both sides. This has only got a bevel on one side, meaning you do seem to get straighter cuts. They don't go sort of concave. Just using this for tying up the label. Colour, Bentu, blah, 28, 03, 20. I suppose you could put what kind of graft. That was a whipping tongue, but I'm using, you know, on other grafts I'm using the cleft graft, which is a bit easier, but I don't really know. Online when you read about it, people seem to not be terribly fond of it. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's easier or doesn't require as much skill, I don't know. But anyway, that's it, labelled up. Corpen du Plat. Then what I'm doing is I'll just take this over here actually. I'm putting these in a bucket. Well, essentially it's a pot, but I've put it in a bin bag because I want the moisture to be kept in there. So I'm putting them in like that, just keeping them apart so that they're not, you know, the grafts aren't touching. I've used electrical tape on a few. What I read online, well, there's two things with electrical tape. One, you can tighten it up real tight, which is good because it will hopefully bind, you know, hold the root in good contact with the scion. The only thing is it might constrict the tree once it starts growing, so I'll need to obviously cut it off. But you can see I've only got, you know, 1 or 2 buds, so when you're buying a scion, when you buy a length of scion, you normally get quite a length, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buds on it, so you could get potentially at least 3. I'm sure people that were really good at their grafting can get absolutely loads out of that. But yes, I'm keeping them in there, and once I've got as many in there as I want, I'll pour a bit of compost over the top, soak it, put a bit of newspaper over the top just to try and retain the moisture, and soak that too. Then what I'm doing is I've got them in the shed that's been tidied out thankfully, but then I've got a few in there. They're pears, and I've got a few there too. They're also pears. That's just in a bag with some newspaper just to try and retain the moisture. They're in a pot, and they are apples. You can see them all in there. So it's quite, they're in the shed. I've put them in a bit of polystyrene just so they're not absolutely freezing at the bottom. But the temperature at which the union will start to callus and join seems to be, well, it's a wide range, and there seems to be a lot of people online suggesting you can go quite cold and you can go quite warm. So last year I just left them in the shed for a few weeks, and then after that I brought them into the greenhouse once they started to grow, and obviously their leaves would need some light. I brought them into the greenhouse and I left them there for a couple of weeks, and then after that I put them outside and they seemed fine. It does say in the grafter's handbook that I've got, just turn this around, which seems to be quite a famous book, but it does say in the grafter's handbook by R.J. Garner that grafts on apple or pears will form down quite far down, cold temperatures, low single figures. So that's, you know, seems to be my experience, at least based on last year, and hopefully we'll see what happens this year. I do know other people, that's the chair making that noise, but I do know other people online I've seen essentially wrap their rootstocks in towels and put them on a heat mat. So that's quite interesting, but the problem is, I think if you could direct the heat just to the actual union point, it would be good, but if you're heating up the roots as well, I think it really affects the growth of the plant, so it's not as clear cut as just fire some heat onto it or take them inside, because it's really on the union that you want the heat, which is obviously hard to achieve in your sort of standard back garden setup.